To this story now, not-profit organization, the Rivonia Circle, is hosting an activist exchange tomorrow. Hundreds of activists from community-based organizations and civic structures will have conversations about South Africa's biggest challenges. For more on this, we're joined now by Rivonia Circle Director Tessa Dooms. She's with us in studio. Tessa, thank you very much for your time. So what do you mean activist exchange?
So we mean creating spaces for people who are change makers in society. I mean, activists is a catch-all for people who are taking action, people who see where the challenges are and are willing to raise their hands or have already started in their various communities, in their various organizations, in their various associations, and saying what are the issues that we are facing. We have many organizations who are partnering with us, so it's not only a Rivonia Circle event, but we have organizations that are hosting different conversations, some on education. We have equal education coming in with Section 27 to do that, some on electoral reform, some conversations are on civic participation and education. So there are many conversations that will be happening that say, how do we start to take action to change the course of the future of the country?
And of course, one of the things that you were saying is that this is to actually give South Africans the power to tell their own narrative about the country and to change whatever they feel is wrong. As you can see, in the past couple of days, it's been quite a rough couple of days in many townships in Gauteng, where people are trying, well, that's what they would say. They'd say that we're taking back the power and we're doing what police won't do. So, you know, what's your reaction, especially to that and the fact that this emanates from, you know, those 8 women who were gang raped?
Yeah, I mean, at the Rivonia Circle, we talk about politics as the power to act. And we always make the point that everybody has power to act. And sometimes we don't think about that. We don't think about the fact that all of us, whether we are, you know, in remote areas of the country, whether we're in far-flung communities, whether we're known or unknown, have the power to act. And a lot of our body politic, a lot of the way our society structure says, there's the powerful and the powerless. And what communities are showing is that if government doesn't step up, if business doesn't step up, if those in society with the most power and levers of power in their hands don't step up, they will use their power to act in various ways. Our call to action is that we all do have power, and we need to start thinking strategically and intentionally about how we use that power so that we don't only resist, we don't only rise up at the point of no return, we don't only protest, but we also come together to build. And there's nothing wrong with protest. Protest is important. It's an important function in our society for people to be able to raise their voices and sound an alarm, but we also need to use that power to create together. And I think what we forget is that in the 1970s and the 1980s in this country, the political parties were actually banned. You know, the places and the spaces where we now think all power to act lies, within party structures and within government structures, those things were not available to the majority of South Africans. But people created spaces where they could act, community forums, they created street committees, they created all sorts of structures where they were taking charge of their own lives. And we kind of in 1994 gave that up. We gave that up because we said, well, you know, what's there to fight for now? You know, we have a government of our own and our own people, and we gave away our power, our agency. And we really are calling on not only civil society, but all of society, all of us as residents, as citizens, as people who are part of this community called South Africa, to start to reclaim our own power and think about how do we become part of the solution.
And don't you think also, Tessa, that back then the enemy was quite clear in terms of what the enemy was? It was hatred against each other, etc. It was the apartheid regime, etc. Now there's a lot of enemies, especially for young people. They're facing so many challenges, and maybe they're confused in terms of where to start, and that's why you see them express their anger so much.
I think the point isn't to look for a shared enemy.
Okay.
I think we've spent a lot of time in the last 20 years or so looking for a shared enemy, a boogeyman, you know, the dangerous people, the bad people. What we do need is a shared goal, a shared sense of purpose. In the kind of work that we've done at Rivonia Circle in the last few months, we have a program called Democracy Builder, where we really talk within communities about what are the things they want to solve together. And we've seen communities go very quickly from here are the problems to once we say, is there a common thing we want to solve, to starting programs and starting projects and starting to take action and take initiative. And we have to think about that as part of the solution. We constantly talk about the idea of new politics, and we want to encourage society to think about a new politics, a new power to act. That isn't just about electoral politics. Yes, electoral politics is important. A lot of people are talking about 2024, and people are saying, can we bring 2024 closer, and all of those kinds of things. Yes, we believe that electoral politics is important. We even believe that people need to be thinking about who they're voting for, how they're voting, whether they should be on the ballot or not. We're seeing a lot of community organizations trying to take that route. But we also believe in civics. We believe in education. We believe in empowerment. We believe that people need to understand their democracy and advocate for things, and definitely for community action. There's more to this terrain than just waiting for the next election to see who's going to take power here and there. We have to take power, and we have to devolve it into all of society and all take responsibility for this democracy we're trying to build.
I'm just going to ask you two questions. It's sort of twofold. Firstly, why did you choose Women's Day to have this interaction? Is it because you're going to also be discussing that challenge that we have, the GBV challenge, the fact that in the workplace women are still considered last, etc.? But also in terms of South Africans, you mentioned here that you did a poll, about 1,000 people across various, I think, 6 provinces, and people were saying they're tired of all political parties. Now, when you talk about politics, you talk about politicians who sign policies and things into power. And, how do we fight that? The fact that they, at the end of the day, have the power to sign off these things, while we end up suffering. For instance, the UN treaties that we've signed, that means that everybody, across various parts of the world can just come to South Africa, and then when they commit a crime, not persona non grata, we now have to take the responsibility to deal with that person.
Right. So to answer your first question, why did we choose the 9th of August? Because we take inspiration from the women of 1956, because we sometimes forget what that march was about. That march was actually about democratic rights. It was about passed laws. It was about women's participation in society, their freedom, and it was about human rights. They protested against many violations of human rights broadly. It was women not only advocating for women, it was women advocating for change of an entire society and a democratic future. And we started to think about that and say, those women's cause and plight is not yet done. That's the first thing we must remember. The second thing is they have the thing that they asked for. Particularly the liberation movement asking for the right to vote. We have the right to vote, but that's not the end of our political participation. It's not the end of our democratic participation, and we must demand more of ourselves, and that's why we chose this day. I spoke to Ms. Sophie de Bruyn yesterday, and she was just saying it's so important that we start coming together and do what they did. They went to all corners of South Africa. She was talking about this little beetle that she and Helen Suzman rode in to go to different provinces to make sure that everybody was starting to think about the same thing. And that's the spirit in which we do this. But you're right about the fact that this is not about political parties, because South Africans are very tired when it comes to political parties. South Africans have not only lost hope in one political party or 2 political parties, we've lost hope in the entirety of our democratic system in some cases. People are not showing up to vote en masse. People are not engaging with our politics and our political systems or parliament en masse. And that's not healthy for us. Regardless of who leads in terms of who wins an election, it is not healthy for so many of us to not trust the entirety of the system. And so we really are advocating that we think about our politics differently, that we start saying it's not the center of politics is not just political parties. The center of politics is wherever we are and wherever change needs to happen. We need to start thinking locally and acting nationally, but making sure that all of our voices are heard, whether we are in electoral politics or not.
Tessa, thank you very much for your time and for those words. Definitely think locally, but act nationally. That was Tessa Dooms. She's the director at the Rivonia Circle.